from San Francisco. And let me pass the microphone and video over to Sister Shirley in Lenasia to begin our program on the shift from soul consciousness to God consciousness.
Hello, Sister Denise. Good evening. Lovely to connect with you. Om Shanti. And Om Shanti to the San Francisco family. And how's our Sister Denise?
Excellent. Thank you.
Lovely, lovely. And thank you for giving us this precious, precious time. And the topic today is soul consciousness to God consciousness, and going more deep into that. And Sister Denise, always, my experience with you, you're so deep and so grounded in Baba's knowledge, in Dharna, in yoga, and that level of discipline that I valued over the years, that is absolutely valuable and precious, that you've added to my Brahman life. And I know you've touched many, many other souls as well. So thank you, Sister Denise. Many blessings, and I hand over to you now.
Om Shanti. Good evening, South Africa, and good morning, America. And as you know, America is in great upheaval at the moment because of a murder of a black man by a white policeman who is now standing charged with murder, and the streets are erupting, much looting, fire, and disturbance is there. And so we have a new scene in drama of multiple disasters happening together. And in India, together with coronavirus, there is also the plague of locusts, which is eating up all the crops. And this is a serious problem. So instead of one disaster at a time, it now comes two disasters together, maybe coming three. So the process of transformation is getting, what shall we say, upgraded or downgraded. So that means that we really need to upgrade our personal spiritual practice. And so this session from soul consciousness to God consciousness can hopefully be helpful in that. And so basically, I will talk about the subject for some time, and then we will have a period of questions and answers. So you can please prepare your questions and put them on the chat. And then Brother Harsha will look after that. And it's possible Maggie may be there. I think she may be able to look after that if needed. And then it will become 7 o'clock meditation time in South Africa, which corresponds with our 10 o'clock in the morning here. And so I will do a meditation commentary, and then you will continue with the evening meditation. And nowadays, many of the Brahma Kumars and Kumaris are increasing the meditation time, Amrit Vela, a little longer than normal evening meditation, from half an hour to an hour. There are many bhattis going on. Bhattis are intense meditations for a longer period of time. And because we are all in lockdown and all the centers are pretty much closed, a few are slightly thinking of opening as the lockdown is lifting a little bit, but at least in 14 states in America, there is curfew. And so a double lockdown. And so that means that our collective meditation is happening collectively, but not in the same location. But using the technology, we are starting to experience what it's like to move at the speed of thought. Because when you are using this communications technology, previously, we used to have to go on airplanes and travel from A to B. But now the international flights are not running. And so we travel from A to B with no security, no travel to the airport, no waiting in line. We just go instantly from, California to South Africa in a second. Who could have thought, when we began this process, we heard about service through the mind. We heard about doing everything at very high speed and all over the world. But at that time, internet itself had not been available to the public. It started off as a military process in the 1980s, and then it came out to the public, and computers, home computers, and electronic communication, email, and now in the last little while we have had this video conferencing, video telephones. In those days this was science fiction, and here we are. And so we adjust quite easily, and we're able to be together in a very different way than what we ever expected. And let us see what comes in the future. In spite of all of these changes in our life and technology and so on, our spiritual practice remains essentially the same, but it's becoming deeper and more refined. And so nowadays, what do we mean by soul consciousness? I would say that we need to just clarify that the process of meditation, the process of Raj Yoga, is a two-step process. The first step, we have to move in and then above. So one analogy that I often use is the analogy of the donut. Everybody knows donuts, these rings of sweet pastry. And there's a hole in the middle of the donut which represents going in, and then the space on the outside of the donut, that's the outside space. But the inside space and the outside space, it's basically the same space. And this is what Baba would teach people. The more you go in, the more easily you will find yourself out. And initially we didn't really, we couldn't really quite see. And a lot of people used to meditate by sending their mind out, but without going in first. And they would experience that this is not so successful, even though it was clearly stated. And maybe this donut analogy is helpful. So what does it really mean to be soul conscious? And these things are very subtle, and so generally speaking, we describe them by analogies and symbols and metaphors because our minds are so full of sensory input. And we do have the capacity to imagine and to conceptualize, but the input that we have is all from the physical world through our sense perception. And so Baba has taught us that everything that you can see and hear and experience in the external world can be used as an instrument to be like a bridge or a reference to take you to the inner world. And so if you see a flower, we have very nice flowers here. What is the meaning of a flower? Virtue and the beauty of the soul and the fragrance of the soul. We have microphones in front of me. What is the meaning of a microphone? It means that you can send your spoken voice anywhere. And what is the meaning of light? It's the light of the soul. What is the meaning of clouds? Yesterday I was photographing clouds, and they're very, very beautiful, the clouds yesterday. And what is a cloud? It is said that a cloud is a symbol of a soul who is absorbing the waters of knowledge from the ocean of knowledge. And that cloud travels towards mountains and picking up lots of water, and it goes to the mountains, and then it lets go of that water, and this then becomes the rivers of knowledge. So that all these analogies, which means that soul consciousness includes the idea of taking everything that you can experience in the external world in terms of its symbolic value and its allegorical value, and it takes you to the spiritual meaning. You just need to sort of switch that switch of using everything in terms of its symbolic value to keep you connected. The instruction that we receive when we study Raj Yoga and meditation is be in meditation, be soul conscious all day. And then people feel that this is rather difficult because you have to, meditate like this, and he says, no, you don't need to limit yourself in that way. It's a matter of orientation of your consciousness. So this is also called karma yoga. And karma yoga actually means that you are in a state of soul consciousness and God consciousness while engaged in action through the body, in interpersonal relationships, and being just normal in the material world, but you are able to operate on multiple levels at the same time. So 3 levels. One level is your interaction in the material world in the context of people, places, things, tasks, work, responsibilities, duties, dramas, TV, whatever it is. At the same time, you're aware of being a soul. At the same time, you are detached. You're in the world, but at the same time detached, and at the same time connected with God in God consciousness, so that you are dealing in the world, communing with God, and being a detached observer all at the same time, you see. And this is a skill that slowly we learn by experimentation. So every day in the morning, we practice to meditate, we listen to spiritual discourses, and we learn many things, and then throughout the day we have plenty of opportunities to apply them. And it is made very clear, and it's very clear to us, that there are moments when you are in that, and then there are moments where you forget, and then you're just on the material level. So soul consciousness is to practice to be on these two levels. The consciousness of being a soul in the middle of the material world. And then add to that a third level, consciousness of God, while being conscious of the soul, while dealing with the realities of what's going on all around you. And what's going on all around you is given the name drama. And drama doesn't mean theater so much as a three-dimensional movie, a 3D movie. Have you seen holograms? In Disneyland, I don't know if they still have it. It's a long time since I've been to Disneyland, but there was one of the Disneyland presentations that was called the Haunted House. And so you would go in there, and you go on these different walkways, and it takes you past different scenes. And they had holograms of the ghosts, because if it's a haunted house, there got to be ghosts. And so these holograms, everyone has a hologram on their credit card, right? So you've seen holograms. And then there are also three-dimensional holograms, which are made by a number of cameras, and you create a image that's kind of translucent image. And so they had all this set up in Disneyland for lots of ghosts, and you can really see them, and it looks exactly like someone in the subtle body. Ordinarily, people can only see the subtle body if you are clairvoyant. And a few people are clairvoyant, but most people not. But yet, there's so many ghost stories and the movie Ghost and all of that, so you know what it looks like. And now, to see the real world as a three-dimensional movie is within the bounds of our capacity, because we have so many things that technology has created for us, these simulations, Now we have some men who have just gone up in space, and that's after a long, long time. So they practice through simulations. And for us also, our practice of Raj Yoga is to take these concepts and think about them and practice them. So we're creating kind of simulations until it becomes like real reality. Because the shift, the first big shift, is from body consciousness to soul consciousness. The shifts from soul consciousness to God consciousness is a very easy shift, quick shift. But the big shift that's a bit difficult is to go from the consciousness of being a material body in the material world, dealing with other material people, which we have for thousands of years considered to be reality, and which science has proved to us is actual reality. And then we begin to study that it's just one aspect of reality, and there's other realities behind this reality, which means we change how we look at it. You see? So when you look at a human being as a person who practices meditation, you're looking through their body, not to what's on the other side of their body, but you're looking through the surface of the body to the spiritual being who is present within. And we are always taught that the soul is in the center of the forehead. And we are also taught that you have basically three things, or you are a combination of three things. One is the soul, which is the tiny point of light. That's the actual self. Then you have a subtle body of light, which is not visible. One interesting technical thing that has been done is something called Kirlian photography. And a few decades ago, you used to see a lot of this, but you don't anymore. But anyway, Kirlian photography would show the aura around the edge of your body, or if it was a living plant, this also has an aura. If it's dead, it doesn't have one. If it's inert, it doesn't have. If it's just an object, this will not have any aura. But so the being, the human being, you can see all these rays of light coming out of your body, and you have like a field of energy that is around you that corresponds in a way to the magnetic field that's around the earth. Hmm? Okay, I'm sure we all do. Okay, that's great. So, and when you do yoga, you're going to intensify your aura. And so, so as you say, some people can see, you can see aura, some people can't. And some people can see colors, different colors, so that's very beautiful. And then people ascribe different meaning to different colors of the aura. And some people, they say you've got holes in your aura, so where your spiritual energy is messed up. And so why we practice meditation is to strengthen the subtle energy of the subtle body and the energy of the soul. And the source for absorbing energy into the self is God, the Supreme Being. And so you can see right behind me a little picture of the white dot inside a slightly yellowish aura, and then red and with rays. So this is the way that we represent that point of light that is God, and this radiance. And when we are talking about God consciousness, we're referring to the idea of this two-step process of, first of all, withdrawing oneself from the body. So you really feel a distinction between yourself and your body. And when you do it in a very concentrated way, you can reach a point where you can no longer feel your body. It's as if you are actually bodiless. You can't feel your body anymore. You can see it, but you can't feel it. Otherwise, normally you can feel your body. Am I really here? You know, yes, I'm here. And then, having detached from the body, you're going into this other dimension. So we're taught that there is the physical dimension, the dimension of matter. And matter means air, earth, fire, water, ether, all the elements of matter. And then they also talk about a sixth element of light. And in India, this is called the element of Brahm or Brahman. They speak about it like this. And so yogis try to go there. And many people think that if you go there, you've reached God. But in our teachings, we say, no, that is not God, that is called home. So we souls come from there, and we arrive on planet Earth basically as visitors. So we're kind of aliens, don't tell anyone. And so we arrive in a body, and then we also subscribe to the idea of reincarnation. So the soul leaves one body, takes another, plays a role as an actor through that body, and when that body is no longer serviceable, then you leave it, and ideally is to reach a nice ripe old age, and then you get a vision. Okay, now I'm going to a different body, and then you leave that one. But these days it doesn't happen like that. You could get sick, you could get an accident, you could get shot, you could, all sorts of things happen to stop your body from functioning. And once the body doesn't function, then the soul takes leave and says, bye bye, I have to get a new vehicle. So you see your body as your vehicle. And when you are body conscious, you don't really, like, you might know your body as a vehicle, but how you feel is, this is me. And we take photographs of ourselves, selfies, or other people take photographs of us, and you look at a photograph and you say, that's me. You see, you never say that's my vehicle because that would sound really weird. But so people are so used to identifying with the body. You say, this is me. And so it could be male or female. So you say, I am a woman or I am a man. And then you have gender consciousness. Then you look at your body color, and it could be anywhere from quite pale to quite dark, and then you will classify yourself according to this range of colors. There are not too many people come in green and blue and purple, but sometimes you can paint and then you can get that color. And then and people also have language, you see. And so language is connected with culture. And so people also identify with your language, your culture, belief system, your religion, your taste, your political orientation, your sexual orientation. All these variations are there, and people add these different things as part of their identity. And this forms something that we call a false ego. And when you identify with this false ego, and that ego gets attacked for any reason, some conflict or something like this, then you will also perform certain behaviors that correspond to ways of protecting the ego, because you identify with this. And in spirituality, we call this a false ego. And we also learn about that you, as a soul, you are an actor. And an actor always has masks. And if you go to ancient theater, which was not for entertainment but for religious purposes, right? And they always put masks on. If you go to Mexico, you see tons and tons of masks. Or you go to Africa, everybody has a mask, And what do? We put makeup and hairstyle and glasses and God knows what. And we create a mask, you see. And we perform with that mask. And then when that particular performance is over, then we change costume, we put a different mask. And we have a different persona. You're a different you when you're in public, a different you in private, a different you when you're doing sport, a different you when you're with your relatives, a different you when you're with your friends, a different you when you're at work. So all these different selves are included inside the self. So you are kind of multifaceted being. And soul consciousness is all about remaining independent of the mask. And body consciousness is when you fuse with a particular mask. And so some people, when they ask each other about each other. You meet somebody, you want to know who are you, what do you do, all this type of thing. And many times people will say, I am a, whatever your profession is. They'll say, I am a engineer, I'm an engineer, or I'm a judge, or I am a president of the United States. You know, these are jobs. But people will say, I am the president, I am the head of this hospital, I am the head of this household. And they will speak about themselves in this way, and gradually you fuse with that identity. And you fuse with that identity so much that it becomes your dominant identity. Though while you perform various other sub roles, this is your dominant role. And this then becomes your main ego. And then we have another thing connected with ego, which is also connected with body consciousness, and that is survival skills. And survival skills are things that develop as a response to some sort of trauma. And trauma happens when you experience something, usually in childhood, because children are very sensitive, very fragile, very delicate psychologically. And if they experience race discrimination, that's a trauma. If they experience violence at home or at school, that's a trauma. If they are sidelined, that's a trauma. If their parents are sick, that's a trauma. If their parents get killed or die from an illness, that's a trauma. If they get thrown out, that's a trauma. There's so many traumas which cause a person to have to grow a mask which is for survival. You know, and some people, when they come from one country to another country in search of a better life or a job or something like this, in the United States where we are is all immigrants. Everyone's immigrant, except the native peoples who are put in some corner somewhere on a reservation and not allowed anything, you know. So it's all, there's a lot of wounds. And so trauma is also a wound. And when you get a wound, then you have to protect yourself, because this is a wound that never heals. But you can't have a wound that never heals. You have to heal your wound. But look at this eruption of race violence that has happened all over America in the last 3-4 days. This is because of a wound which got opened up. You know, this wound has been there since maybe 400 years. And every so often it gets, you know, torn. The scar gets torn off and it bleeds. And it bleeds with fire and destruction and all of this kind of thing. And then we again have a lot of conflict and sorrow and suffering and drama. And then after a while, it quietens down, but doesn't heal the wound. You just put a bandage on it. So that wound is festering. And it mixes up with your sense of identity. And there is injustice and many things are there. And all of this creates a survival ego. And you use that to protect yourself in a hostile environment where anything could attack you anytime. And so you have to be careful. And what this will do is it will cause a distortion in your personal development. It will cause a distortion in your character. And this distortion in the character, this survival ego, is very sensitive, because underneath it there is a very deep pain, you see. And if you have an area that's bruised, Okay, it hurts, but if somebody touches that, it hurts a lot more. And so when anyone touches your wound, consciously or unconsciously, you're going to explode because it opens up the pain. You see? So all of this is there, you know. Everyone has it to a greater or lesser extent. But it's not very clearly understood to some extent. Some people understand it quite well. Some people understand it in a funny way, or all wrong in my opinion. But you know, different people have different ideas about all this. But anyway, when you become soul conscious, it then becomes time to heal your wound. Because when you withdraw from your mask, then it puts you in touch with your wound. So you'll feel it. And then you will say, oh my God, what is this, you know? Because you will not know what it is. But it comes up, you see. So when you shift your consciousness, you start to feel things that you had numbed yourself against. And so therefore, together with this process of withdrawing into the inner realm of your being and making contact with this other dimension of light, we learn, together with that, we learn to view the outside world as a movie. And this movie has many layers on it. And the people who make movies in the world, they make movies with layers. And people who, you know, go to movies, it's not just entertainment. It's something very deep, which is able to provoke a catharsis, which is something that enables you to make contact with your wound, because your wound is festering, is poisonous, is damaging you. It creates physical and mental illness. It creates psychological weakness and distortion. So this wound needs to be sorted out, needs to be healed. And so the meditation starts to get the poison of the wound to come out. And so every so often you will experience these big eruptions of negative emotion, and you will wonder, where did that come from? And it is the way how this wound and this poison comes out little by little, like a little bit of steam comes off of a volcano. It doesn't have a full-on eruption, but a little bit of steam comes out. Sometimes it's big, but, you know, inside the volcano there's fire. And that fire is going to come out one fine day. And it happens with people. All of a sudden, somebody will erupt. What we're seeing in this social disturbances that are happening, this is an eruption from the wound of the racial discrimination, man's inhumanity to man and woman and children, and erupting because there's pain. But then to make it go away and to make it heal, what can heal this is God. But then how? What are the mechanics of this? How do you do this? You know? And we're also, I'm not just only speaking with America, but primarily speaking with Africa, South Africa, a place where the apartheid system was there. And so there is this wound in South Africa, which every so often is going to erupt just like anywhere else. So you can, when there's extra pressure in a society, which this a coronavirus is a very interesting kind of global catastrophe. It's been described as a invisible enemy. So some people pull out all their guns and syringes and they go around fighting coronavirus that way and say, okay, we're at war against this virus and everybody has to stay home under lockdown. Like in a war, you put black blinds so that nobody can see the light where you are and shoot you. But so this is not a war against people, it's a war against a virus, so something different, So everybody has to wear their masks, and in Second World War, they used to have to wear gas masks. Have you seen those? Yeah. And so you're looking a bit like monstrous. These our little masks, they're not monstrous, but those were. And you're always having to be careful in case anybody's going to, infect you. So you have to watch out for that. So you're keeping social distance, you're keeping alone, and everybody's a potential, infector. And so this is all different. And then other things. So when you get pressure like this wound can get touched and it can erupt. And so we saw, I don't know about in Africa, but certainly in United States, the huge spike in domestic violence is incredible, what's been going on. And essential services, along with grocery and pharmacy, which are quite understandable, gun shops, everybody's utterly armed and dangerous right now. And casinos for those who are addicted to gambling, and bars for those who need alcohol. And so we have a society of people with a lot of addictions. And where you have addictions, an addiction is also a sign of spiritual depletion. Addiction is where you're not able to manage your emotions. And when you have your wound touched, it comes out as emotions, and it comes out as all kinds of fire and brimstone, and all your fragility that is held. You hold yourself together with your addiction, which makes you weaker and weaker and weaker. It's a very, very explosive mix. So in the middle of that, we are learning soul consciousness and God consciousness because we know we have to heal. And we have to heal something that feels unhealable. But God is called the healer, the great healer. In India, God is called the Vaidyanath, which is the Lord of Ayurvedic healing. And Ayurvedic healing is where whatever the illness is, it is brought to the surface where it erupts and it goes out. And then you have purged yourself of whatever is the poison inside you. So what happens in meditation is you turn deep, deep, deep within. You make a difference between yourself and your mask, and you go to your core, which means that you make contact with your wound, and you also make contact with your heart, which is mostly broken, and you also make contact with the core of your being, which is the pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful being of light within. And this is your real self. And because of identifying with your external performance and with your wound, this creates quite an upheaval inside, because you begin to realize that that is not the real me. And what that means is you can have a difference between your pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, light self and your pain. You create a distance. And then your pain is no longer you. Your pain is something that is there, but it's not what you are or who you are. It's not indistinguishable from yourself. You're distinguishing it. And then there are all these layers, like a picture of a target, all these layers. And meditation takes you to the deepest inner core where you are actually whole and invulnerable and in your power. So meditation is a journey that takes you in to that inner core. However, the inner core itself is depleted. So that how much love, how much peace, how much power, how much, purity, the soul is contaminated, is affected by all these things, and the energy has reached a very low level. So therefore the soul needs power. So when the soul is empowered, you can handle all these dramas, all these attacks, all these problems. And so this is the key, you can say, medicine for the soul. And for that, we need to make contact with God, which is the God consciousness. So you turn in, which is the biggest work, to turn in and reach the soul. And then the soul orients itself in that dimension of light to that being of light who says, I am God, I am the one you've been looking for, and I am light, and I am your mother, your father, your friend, your beloved. I am everything for you. Just open yourself to me and let my light and my power flood into you, and you will heal, because you are forever. And this is the time when you have reached your lowest point, and this is the time when I come and fill you to your highest point. And so this is why we do this, because this is that time. So we have to practice, and we have to understand this process of purging the soul of the poison, and also absorption of energy into the soul. So there are many, many different things that go on during meditation. And as you begin meditation, you have to go step by step. There's really no other way. But as you go step by step, you begin to see and feel the machinery. It's a kind of machine that operates on your being, the machine of it's all done in the mind. And so we're used to mechanical machines, but the mind can be looked at in analogous or metaphorical terms. So on one hand, the mind is a sense organ where you can sense things, you can sense vibrations, you can sense qualities. You cannot experience love through your body. In fact, you can't experience anything with your body. All experiences, physical and spiritual, are all experienced in the mind. You see, we didn't know that. We thought you smell with your nose, so you experience it in your nose, or you experience taste in your mouth, or you hear in your ears. But actually, what we're told is, no, these are instruments, but where you actually experience it is in your mind. That's where you really feel things. And the mind itself has been all sort of messed up because of sensory overload, because of trauma, because of not knowing what itself is, So we need time to focus our attention on the self. So this is the first step, the biggest step, to orient your attention within. So mostly our attention, focus of attention, is on the outside. And so you kind of operate on the surface of your body and beyond. And now soul conscious says, okay, that's fine, but now you've got to turn your attention within and detect with your mind, detect yourself. So the energy of the mind is turned upon itself. And then you can sense, well, your mind is like a sense organ, you can sense what is your peace. And very often when we begin meditation, we receive a gift, a kind of divine gift, to be able to feel what it's like to be a soul at peace. So we say this word Om Shanti, but you may not be peaceful at that time when you're saying it. You're just saying it. But to experience that in the midst of all this internal and external chaos, there is this inner core which is actually at peace, and you can only experience it when your mind is focused on it. And your mind does not have the capacity for focusing. So you need another part of your consciousness, which we call the intellect, and that is like a muscle which will tell the mind, go here, or go there, or go in. And this is called the power of concentration. So to concentrate the mind on itself, and the mind will say, I want to go all over the place. And you gently, 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 you cannot force the mind. You have to get it interested, because it will go if it wants to. So you have to have food for the mind. And this is where the spiritual knowledge comes in. You take in information, give to the mind, okay, now feel this, feel this, feel this, and get the mind to focus on the self. And when the mind gets a nice experience, or you, the soul, through the mind, get a nice experience, you say, yes, that feels right, right? When something feels right, you say, yeah, you go for it. If it doesn't feel right, you don't go for it. And this feel right is something that happens in the mind, not in the intelligence. Very often in the intelligence, you will say, this is not right. And the mind says, yeah, but it feels right. So the mind actually overrides the intelligence unless there is a lot of ego of intelligence, which will then undermine the mind. So you get an internal conflict between this ego-based intellect and this mind, which has been through all sorts of catastrophes and is very unstable, like a flame in the wind of all these different emotions. It can't hold up, you know. But we are taught, this soul that you are, this is indestructible. So even if all these things happen, it means it can be healed. So what are we doing now is opening ourselves to the possibility of deep, deep healing of the soul, of the mind, of the heart, of all aspects of your being. And the energy, the resonance that heals us is coming from this, what we call God, which is not human. So we need to create a relationship with a being who is non-human. Is that okay? Because it's quite difficult to think of having a relationship with an animal is fine, you know, a dog, a cat, a cow, a pigeon, you can have a relationship with a bee even. This is totally possible. But a relationship with a being who is higher than human, who doesn't have a physical body, who is just pure mind, that's very subtle. And this is why we have to go first to soul consciousness to get into that depth of subtlety, because only in that subtlety can we actually orient the mind towards that point of light and make contact. When you make contact, you know, because there's a big current that passes, like a big electrical current. And you know what would happen if you put your two fingers on the wires, right? You get electrocuted. So, you know, you're not really wanting to get electrocuted, but you are wanting to light up. So wherever we have lights, it's because those two wires are passing through some coils and it lights up. So this contact between the soul and the Supreme Being is like two dots coming together so that the energy from one can be absorbed into the other, which not only makes you powerful and bright, but it also is a healing energy, is a resonance which recalibrates the dissonance in the frequency of the soul, because every soul is like a musical note which is off, you know, like all the guitar strings, they have to be tuned up, otherwise you can't play a good tune. But this is like also tuning up. So the soul gets tuned up by its contact with God so that your frequency is harmony. We have to be in harmony with ourselves, in harmony with God. And then when we are fully harmonious, then we actually harmonize or cause the external catastrophes and chaos to get very subtly brought into harmony. Now, to make this really effective, we have to be very focused and very concentrated. But we don't have to be rigid, because if you try and do this by force, it's not going to work. The mind is highly allergic to force. The intellect likes force, you know, so you can apply force to the mind will say, forget you, go away. If you do this, I'll break. And you get a broken mind, you don't want that. And so we have to be subtle. It's really the good word, I think, for this, is to become as subtle as we possibly can. And then you can make that jump from really contact with the self and then contact with that one. And this contact is done through love. It's a matter of the heart. Now you have a broken heart, your heart is going to close down and become a frozen heart, right? Many people have frozen heart. So if you melt a frozen heart, you're going to get flood. You're going to get tsunami. So, you know, it's quite a delicate matter to allow the heart to melt, to open, to trust, to receive this healing, beautiful energy that comes from the one who will not apply injustice and hurt and so on. But what's in the way between the soul and God is some of the ideas that have come through religion, where you're supposed to be in fear of God because God is going to throw you in a cauldron of fire and all kinds of things to punish you for all your sins. So you're going to say, okay, I'm not going to go anywhere near that one, you know, because I don't want to be thrown into a fire and brimstone and God knows what else. It's bad enough like this, you know, you don't want any more. And so people are pretty closed off to God because of some of these ideas that we have learned through any of the religions. Most of the religions are talking about God as someone who is quite dangerous. And so if you are a soul who has deep love for God anyway, and doesn't much pay attention to threats around God, but just wants to connect and wants to experience that and feel that, then you go past all those barriers and get through. So there are many barriers, but they can be crossed. And this is something that is called a journey. Life itself is a journey. You may go from home to work and back to home, and it's not that kind of journey, but there's a journey through time. It's a journey through understanding. It's a journey to find yourself, to find meaning, to find what is really important about existence, what existence is all about. Why am I here? What am I doing? With whom am I doing this? Who can I trust? Why do I have difficulties? Who am I anyway? So all these questions come up, and they are something that you explore in your journey as you come closer to the self and closer to God. And probably as you reach to the end of your life and you feel, okay, I have understood what I had to understand, and then you can let go. That, I think, is the last thing you do, is you let go. And you know this very famous expression, let go and let God. So you let go and you go to God. And after that, nobody sees because you're gone. But where do you go? You go further on your journey because there is continuity. And the soul who is close to God is filled with the fruits of that journey, which prepare you for new life in a better world. So I'm going to stop there, and we can see if we can have some questions.
Thank you. That was so insightful. Thank you for your wisdom and education. It is wonder of drama and God's intelligence through you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessings to Africa and America. Such fortune for me to have listened to this class. Thank you. Ayurvedic Doctor God, love it. Purging soul from poison and absorbing healing light and love from God. Thank you, God. This was mind-blowing experience for mind to turn its energy back on itself. You're living proof of God's existence.
Thank you.
Yes, Denise
Hello,
Ben.
Shirley. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, Denise Ben. So deep and so powerful. I mean, for myself, just to remove the poison and the process that you took us through to remove the poison, so then only we can really, really connect with Baba and remove that poison. So to be free, and now is the real time. And Baba's really given us this gift to get all that treasures from you that you've been working with, how you removed that poison and became free. I really value that so much, so much. And
Thank
letting
you.
Om Shanti, Sister Denise. Presently, I'm experiencing tremendous painful anxiety and fear. I recognize the feeling from very early in my life. How do I simply sit with this feeling, not enlarging it, but also surrendering it, simply to clear the wound?
Yes. You know, what we are taught in Raj Yoga is that there are spiritual powers to be acquired. And we hear about 8 powers, one of which is called the power of accommodation, and another of which is called the power of tolerance. So when you have fear of something, okay, that fear is connected or letting you know that you do not believe that God is taking care of you. And so you need to really cultivate and open up your trust that it will be okay, and that you are an indestructible, immortal being of light, and even death cannot destroy you. And gradually you start to shift that fear.
Hello, hello. Many, many blessings. It was a wonderful class. Nisben, what I appreciated about today's class is that emotional pain and psychological pain is not an issue that is generally addressed in the idea.
Right.
And, we all know that it presents itself as waste, also inability to have yoga, etc. But I think that your class touched a nerve for many souls, because this pain is what causes the blocks in yoga. So I think that more should be shared on this as to how people should manage their own pain.
Okay.
That's class, but it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Let me share a few thoughts about that. And I think we have some assumptions. And one assumption is we keep on hearing this word easy Raj Yoga. So everybody thinks it's supposed to be easy. It's not easy. Another translation for this word that is translated as easy is in the context of people. And so you're doing this in the context of people, places, and things. And you're also doing it in a context of accumulation from the past, because whatever has happened in the past is still with you in your heart, in your bones, in your blood, in your fascia, in your muscles. It's right there with you, and it gets triggered by lots of different things. So the emotional pain that we experience is this poison coming out. And what our society normally does is it tells us to block it, and to not express it, and to suppress it. And when you do that, then it's like if you would put a big stone over the mouth of a volcano, that fire is going to come sideways, but it's definitely going to come out because it's erupting. So this power of accommodation and power of tolerance are to be used to create a kind of larger space for that negative energy to come out. And so if it comes out through tears, or it comes out through shouts, or it comes out through whatever, but it will come out. And our desperate attempts at suppressing it just only makes it worse. But we can learn to create this sort of opening in our heart, an opening in our mind. So this surge of sort of dangerous electric energy can come out without us reacting to it, you see, because one is the energy of the emotion, and the other is our reaction to the emotion, which is like an additional emotion. So we need to be aware that it is okay for these things to erupt, and just allow them to just pass through. And for that we need to not be confused about it, because the reason that we don't understand this is because we have been told that this is easy, that it's painless, and da da da, you know. But with this, you know, we've taken off all the anesthetics and said, okay, now, you know, to manage pain, you do not suppress it. That is not the way to manage it. You have to create a channel that the pain can move through. It's rather like when there is a dam, and you have dammed a river, and that's nice, you keep some water.
Owen Falls in Uganda.
Uganda, exactly. So if there's too much water, too much rain, then that dam is going to burst. So they have to open up the sluices so that the water can go through. So we have to create, not just dam the emotions, but create sluices so they can come out little by little, and then everything can flow okay. So we have to understand that all these are sort of geographical analogies for where what is going on in us. You know, the human body is a kind of microcosm of the planet Earth. Like, it has 70% water, and we also 70% water. I mean, the soul is living in a leather bag filled with warm mud and a bit of sticks to hold it in place. So that's the human body. And of course we make it look nice and so on, but you know, the being inside who's carrying all this stuff, this is the soul. And now when the soul connects with itself and connects with God, why is that? What is that for? It's so that you can become free, so that it can be a flow of pure energy, and all the impure energy is allowed to flow out and leave the soul. So sometimes there is the analogy of fire, and sometimes you also hear yoga called fire, and you have the fire of anger, which is a one big emotion, and people's emotion will erupt in anger and violence. And violence and fear are also happen together, because people are afraid of other people's violence, and afraid of pain, and afraid of loss, and afraid of seeing bad things. So we need to gradually be able to see that this is a movie, and make ourselves slowly able to bear and endure, and allow this extremely negative energy to pass through and get dissipated, knowing that it is okay for that to happen, because there is no single human being who is not a soul. And every soul, every body has a soul in it. And even if someone is killed, the soul is then released. The body is destroyed, but the soul continues. That being continues. That person remains there, and they will incarnate in another one. No one can get lost, but people carry their pain. And so we need to release that pain, and that gets released through these emotions coming out and purging. And yoga will do a number of things. And one of the things that happens when you have good, solid, strong yoga is it causes an eruption. And when there's an eruption, then that thing which was poisoning you on the inside is now gone. And so following the eruption, you experience some lightness and freedom and ease. And all of this poison comes out little bit by little bit in little eruptions. And every so often you may get a big eruption, but you need to have like an attitude towards it that it's okay. Otherwise, in the world, we have the attitude that it's not okay. It means I'm not a good yogi. It means I'm a failure. It means this or that, the other. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that the poison that is inside wants to come out. And you also want it to come out. So everybody's happy when the poison goes out. No problem.
Okay, very quickly. One in soul consciousness and connecting to God as a soul. How will I know if I'm truly connected to God? What will be the measure or a sign that I have connected?
I think it's quite important to not try to measure that. Because, you know, we have inside us this need for a guarantee. And it is said there are no guarantees. If you are remembering God from your heart, then it means God notices it. Because God is very aware when anyone remembers him. And if you're really concentrated, that's good. And you may or may not, but ultimately you will receive the current. So one sign that you're really connected is that you get the current. Good. So the question was about how do I know that I've connected with God? The thing is, don't try to know that you've connected with God. Just connect and orient yourself. And from time to time, you will get a response. And what basically God is saying is, don't look for a response every time. Just know that I am here and I am passing you power. Because why? I want you to become more and more and more subtle. And if you get a really tangible response, that's his encouragement. But he says, I'm not going to do that every time because you're not going to make the effort to get subtle. He's quite a good psychologist, actually. But we have to become so subtle so that we can actually be as subtle as God is. And then we can really feel that feeling, but it becomes more and more and more subtle because the journey is to go from gross to ultra subtle. And we are so solid in our body consciousness, but the soul is so subtle, so volatile, you can say. And we have to slowly become this. We might be a bit impatient and think that we can reach there just very quickly, but it takes time and it takes a lot of patience, but we are rewarded for that effort. Yeah.
May you please explain how to absorb God love and hold on throughout the day to protect the self-respect?
I think, again, I would say work on your subtlety and just know that he says, okay, spend time in remembrance. Through the day, have little breaks, little traffic controls, and just keep taking it in. And it will build up, and have faith that if you're doing it, it is building up, but don't always look for these very tangible signals, because then you won't do the work. You will again become like a devotee who wants God to do all the work. And he says, I've been working for you for thousands of years. Now it's time you work for yourself. So you need to do this for yourself. Otherwise you remain dependent, and that's not useful for you.
Kajal said that today she really felt it. She felt that she's not the only one who's been erupting from time to time, and that's such a relief. Got a sense of rise in my self-confidence. So she thanks you for that.
Good.
Manpreet says, I've observed that we meet many obstacles in this journey. Why is that? And how do we persist and stay motivated?
Oh, well, it's a competition. And it's an obstacle course, you know, and only a few make it to the end, but you make sure you're one of those few. And if you get an obstacle, it means that you're up for it, because you never get anything that you can't handle, but you usually think, why? Oh, I can't handle this. Why? What? He says, no, do it, do it, do it. And when you handle the obstacles, you get strong and you get experienced and you get prepared for the next obstacle, because it's all about making oneself more and more capable, competent, experienced, subtle, all these things. And so that if there are not obstacles, you can never make the shifting and the improving and the development that this is all about. So enjoy the obstacles, even if they're not very nice, but just enjoy them anyway and just go. Keep going. Yeah, we have to keep going.
Is there a good material I can read on power of accommodation and power of tolerance?
The best material is your life experience, and you have to churn. Churn. Think about it, and you will get insights, and these insights will help you. You know, we write lots of things, but the real source of our food for thought is the Murli, the morning Murli. And so have faith in your own ability to extract what you need from that, to understand, and use the experience of your life, your day-to-day situations, to actually grow these powers. You are in many ways self-sufficient if you keep yourself connected with God and keep studying the Murlis and go deep, because they're all encrypted and you have to go deep and go round and round and round to get into them. So I think let us have some meditation now, because we're into the meditation time. So take a moment to go through this process of going from normal, everyday, regular consciousness, body consciousness, and turn your attention within. And just let yourself become quiet. Take your time. Just focus on that point of light in the center of the forehead. Think of yourself that I am that light in this body. And I am pure consciousness. I am not this body. Feel the energy of your being. Feel the separation between being and body. Let yourself shift onto that dimension of light. Feel the stillness of the world of light. Feel the presence of God, the Supreme Being. And go close to that. And let that energy envelop you. And let yourself merge into that feeling. Feel it soaking into your being. And I'm going to let you stay in that stage. I'm going to take your sweet leave, but continue with the meditation for as long as you can do it. Just letting yourself go gently, slowly, deeper and deeper, and enjoy that state of being surrounded in that pure energy.